All right. Well, welcome everybody. We have the great Kareem McKenzie, two-time Super Bowl champion, who's going on to bigger and better things, earning his PhD in counseling. Kareem, welcome to the classroom. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. My pleasure to be here.
First off, hard to believe it's been over a decade since you retired, Kareem.
It's not hard for me because obviously, sitting here looking at myself and seeing all this gray hair, I can definitely attest to it's been a long period of time since I've been on the field and a long time since I've actually put my hand in the dirt.
It's been so long that we're talking about Eli Manning being a Hall of Fame quarterback. You were with Eli during the early days, actually, his first season in 2004. Did you think Eli was going to become the quarterback that he became?
Well, just a little bit of a correction. I actually came in 2005, so he actually had 1 year of experience, maybe a half a season before I got there. And seeing his sense of professionalism, the way he was attentive to detail, and his command of the actual huddle itself, um, he had the potential then, I would say. He had the potential, and to see how he developed over his career and obviously winning two Super Bowls and playing for 16 or so odd years. I mean, talk about being able to put up some numbers in a very, good organization and to be able to carry that team in some instances, I think it's well deserved.
Before we get to what you're working on now and talking to the students in the Iona University sports communication class, back then you see you talk about offensive line and offensive lines having trouble getting time to gel. It took your
Mhm.
team back then a few years to kind of gel and become the force that you were when you were dominating 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, and 11, winning two Super Bowls. It takes a little time to gel and for players to play together and get to know their tendencies.
It does definitely. You have to have the experience of being on the field and seeing things the same way and being able to communicate and know how one another will approach a situation, and that only comes through experience and through repetition. So, to say the least, it requires the ability to, number one, stay on the field and be healthy, and number two, to actually have the opportunity to play with one another and to develop those intricacies and those nuances to where you don't necessarily need to communicate something, but just by seeing it, you're going to see it from the same viewpoint.
Here in New York, we're very critical, obviously, in sports talk radio. We have a couple of young quarterbacks, Daniel Jones going on more than a few years now, Zach Wilson in his third year. How do you assess their play so far overall and the progress? And at what point do teams say we might have to go in another direction?
I don't think it would be fair of me to assess them necessarily. I can just go ahead and speak from the vantage point of a offensive lineman and what I see in terms of the tendencies and what they may be able to do better. And I think it's a sense of understanding that if you know your actual offensive line is only going to give you 2 or 3 seconds to throw the ball, trying to extend the play doesn't necessarily help. In certain situations, we have Daniel Jones where he was able to go ahead and get out of situations and some of the pressures and extend the play and or run for a first down. That was great for him. But, as an offensive lineman, necessarily, we don't like it when quarterbacks per se run because we kind of know if the quarterback's in a certain given spot, we know to protect that spot. And when they start moving, it makes it more difficult for us. So we try to go ahead and maintain as tackles the width of the pocket and the guards and center, maintain the depth of it so we can give him that level of comfort and that warm blanket to kind of be able to sit back there and dice up defenses as we've seen some quarterbacks do. As it applies to Zach Wilson, man, that it's it's a tough situation, I think, for him in that you had, Aaron Rodgers, of course, come in to be the savior, so to speak, and to take this institution to a Super Bowl, and for him to now get hurt and injured, and now it's falling back into Zach's lap, and man, he's doing the best he can with what he has, because to be the consummate professional first and foremost, to have the ability to go in there and take command of that offense and make it do what it has done. I mean, obviously we know that the Jets are primarily a defensive-minded team and they run through their defense. Um, it's a tough situation all around, I think, for them. And I think the same thing bodes as well for the Giants in that we know that from a defensive perspective, it's pretty similar. If you can go ahead and get 11 guys on the field and know and stick to their assignments, it's pretty easy to go ahead and go out there. As we used to say as offensive linemen with defensive guys, it's pretty simple. See ball, chase ball. Very simple.
Do you need a PhD to be an offensive lineman? Because it sounds very complicated.
You don't need a PhD, but the ways in which I like to a metaphor I like to use is almost like a symphony, right? You can kind of tell those different pieces, where it be the winds, the percussion, whatever it is, and you need to have a solid brass section, that really carries it. And if you don't have that solid brass section to really go ahead and carry it through, you can tell something's off, and the composer, which would be in this instance the quarterback, kind of directs it all. So he directs us to where we need to have our attention, and we kind of let all those other corollary aspects go ahead and have their little part, whether it be the triangle, the thimbles, whatever it is. Those little touches that make it sound cute. No, it's wonderful, but it's not necessarily the meat and potatoes of it.
We see a lot of quarterbacks getting injured in the NFL constantly, even back when you played. Were you amazed that Eli Manning took the beating he did and was able to go in every game and not miss a beat?
I think that goes to the the durability of players overall from those former years, the earlier years. I mean, you look at some of what the earlier players in the 60s and 70s were able to accomplish. And I forget the name of the gentleman from Tennessee that actually retired. He's actually a Hall of Famer now, but he had something like 200 and some odd games in a row where he didn't miss a beat. And I think that level of playing, that tenacity and that motivation to be as good as Eli was, and to week in and week out go ahead and perform, that's a testament to his mental fortitude as well as his motivation to be able to be dependable for the team as a whole.
Now the big stuff that everybody really cares about. Does Tom Brady send you a Super Bowl for ruining his perfect season in 2007? Talk about that team, talk about that game, and that
Oh man,
and just what was it like hoisting that Super Bowl trophy? All that stuff. Throwing a lot at you, Kareem, but you could handle it.
I think one of the main things is the sense that when we initially played the New England Patriots in the last game of that season, and we saw how close we were to beating them, and ultimately they kind of got away with one, and their sense of narcissism and their ego, and the fact that they were unbeatable, they were untouchable. We kind of had a chip on our shoulder in essence, and we came in, of course, as underdogs in every game we played and had to play on the road consistently. And when we had the ability to take on another team that had pretty much beat us pretty soundly during the regular season, and we had an opportunity to play them in the Super Bowl, we knew that all bets were off. It was anyone's game, and in the Super Bowl, you kind of understand and know that it's the last game of the season. It's going to be real football at that point in time, because it's not a sense of holding or whatever it is. It's you do what you need to do to go ahead and win the game. And that's pretty much what we did. And I still have not yet watched the full game itself. I just have those memories. And one of the things that stick out in my mind is that when we had, first possession of the ball, I think we had the ball for something like 9 minutes in the first quarter. And that was just unbelievable at that time. Like, we were out there literally for 9 minutes, and it was going to have to be a game where we fought tooth and nail. And there were some situations where we kind of got lucky, so to speak, or chance fell in our favor, and we were able to go ahead and do some pretty good things and hold a very prolific and a pretty lofty offense to, I think, they had, maybe 14 points, 17 points, whatever it was.
17 to 14.
17 fortunes. I mean, to think about the way they were beating teams throughout that whole season, and to come down to the Super Bowl, and it kind of just, they got stuck. So hats off to the defense of being able to go ahead and hold them to 14 points, and just a lot of guys out there contributing and making it the magical game that it was.
Tell us something that the average fan doesn't know about that game and that team.
Let's see, the one fumble that was, I forget who fumbled the ball, but we definitely did not have possession of it. But by the time the whistle blew and the pile was unraveled and uncovered, we had possession of it. You know, we did indeed lose that fumble in that game. Another thing I think that other fans or individuals don't know, that one catch by David Tyree, and I wasn't aware of this because I didn't really think about it, but I think during that whole practice week, we ran that play. And in all honesty, and David could tell you better than I, but that may have been the first time he caught the pass on that route that whole week. So to catch it on his helmet in and of itself, I mean, what more could you say about a game just, going in our favor and being able to go ahead and do the things that we were able to do?
Cap an incredible season, knocking off the New England Patriots to their perfect season. You start the next year, you start off hot, and Plaxico gets hurt. You might have won back-to-back Super Bowls if not for that, but you do make it back to the Super Bowl again in 2011. Not as anticipated as 2007, but you had to go through a couple of tough teams. You had to go to Green Bay, and you had the running game, and you force your will over the Packers, and you force your will to another Super Bowl victory, literally with running the ball. Something simple as running the ball and imposing your will. And I know offensive linemen, I've talked to Irv Eatman about it and Bart Oates, and offensive linemen love to run the ball. They'd rather run the ball than pass protect. Is that correct?
I mean, in all honesty, when you think about it, who enjoys attempting to run backwards faster than somebody does forward, right? Because when you're passing the ball, that's what you have to do. You get to try and back up and protect your quarterback. No, you want to run the ball. You want to go ahead and take control of the game, take control of the line of scrimmage, and just basically demean and eradicate the defense. I can remember in some games, earlier in my career where the defense would call out the plays we were running, and we still ran the play and still got 5 yards. And nothing is more deflating to someone's ego and their motivation to play than when they know specifically where the ball is going to be run and there's nothing they can do about it. In that game, particularly in Green Bay, I mean, it was negative 32 or something. I mean, I literally had frostbite. A couple other players had frostbite. Literally, you could not feel your limbs during that game. In pass protection, I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't a sense of me trying to pass protect. I was literally just throwing punches at that point, because that's all you could do, as cold as it was. And I mean, when you think about it, negative 20 some odd degrees. I recall we went out for the pregame warm-ups and somebody put a Dixie cup of water or whatever on the sideline. And by the time we came back inside, it was frozen solid. So I mean, on that day, yeah, pass protection was not fun in the least bit. Running the ball, just going ahead and moving forward and keeping it to advance the ball down the field was definitely in our best interest. And I think any offensive lineman that enjoys pass protection more, they didn't initially start out at that position. They played something else, possibly, because I think every offensive lineman enjoys run blocking. I mean, that's what we love to do. That's what I enjoy to do. I can only speak for myself.
Then you beat the 49ers in the championship game. That was Ali versus Foreman there. That was a slugfest there, huh?
That was maybe one of the sloppiest, wettest, most unbelievable games. I think I think we ran 70 or 80 some odd plays on offense in that game to win it in overtime. And it just happened to go ahead and come down to a fumbled punt, and in that situation. And you had San Fran at the time that was running on all cylinders, and they had a great season, and they were quote unquote going to the Super Bowl. And we happened to go out there and again, our second time out there that year, and everything fell in our favor that day too. You know, it was a close. I mean, it may have been a close game. I don't recall exactly, but it wasn't a great feeling on that flight back. That initial time, knowing that we kind of let one get away from us. We didn't play our best, but later on that year when we were able to go out there for the NFC Championship, that was one of our best games.
And then rematch with Tom Brady and the Patriots, Bill Belichick, Tom Coughlin. Were you confident going into this game?
Confident. I don't know if confidence was necessarily an aspect of it. It was something to the sense of we kind of played them earlier in the year. We had a game against them in New England. We were able to win. And it was just a sense of, okay, here we are again, a rematch. And I know for myself, it was a sense of, let's just go ahead and play the game. Okay, I don't need to wait a week. Let's go ahead. Let's go out there and do this, because I think that's one of the aspects that as a player that some fans don't recognize is that by that time, that's maybe like the 24th, 25th game of the season. So it's been a long season already. and just trying to keep your body together, get enough rest, and having enough energy to still compete at that high level is difficult. So it's more so a sense of do what we need to do, just rest as much as possible, save your energy. And of course, it was easier because we weren't in Arizona this time. We were in Indianapolis, where, God bless Indianapolis, is a great city for football. But I mean, talk about nothing to do. Man, my family were just like, well, where do we go? I don't know. This is the Midwest. I mean, what I have no clue, but I was able to go ahead and enjoy some time with them. And those experiences, I think, are the best overall in terms of being able to share it with my family.
Once you won your second Super Bowl, this is it. I've had enough. Two Super Bowl championships, and I've done everything I need to do on the field.
No, because the thing is, you always want to go out and defend your championship, right? You want to go out there as the reigning world champion to defend that title and hopefully go for another one. We were so close in the previous time that we had won a Super Bowl that I want to have that same feeling again. And unfortunately for myself, that wasn't in the cards. So I went ahead and, as that came to be, my last game playing as a professional football player.
Well, Kareem, you had an incredible career, and for a lot of professional athletes across the board, they run into trouble after they retire. They have a problem dealing with the lack of applause and what to do with themselves. Maybe some make bad investments, bad advice, and everything. How did you work the landmine of your post-career athletic life, and what was your mindset once you left the game?
Really, when I looked at it, and I think the stats at that time kind of led me towards this path I'm on now, and that back in 2011, 2012, the stats were staggering in terms of what it was for retired athletes, especially coming from the NFL. You had a 75% chance, 5 years removed, of being divorced, financially insolvent, and other issues, so there wasn't a sense of, there's an exit meeting of, okay, well, this is what you do, this is how you find a career. This career I'm sorry, the skills that you develop as a football player don't necessarily translate into a job per se. So how do you transition? How do you translate? How do you know, retool yourself, so to speak? How do you rebuild yourself into what you desire to be? And I think one of the aspects that, as a football player, you don't think about is, what do I do when football is over? How do I develop my career aspirations, my goals, whatever they may have been prior to the NFL, into something, viable when I'm retired? And I knew for myself, having previous experience with counseling, that seeing those statistics and seeing the numbers, I said, well, this sounds like something that would be helpful for players that do retire. And I say retire, and that's a very vague word, and it's a misnomer, because when you retire from something, generally you get, some type of benefit, a disbursement. Well, that doesn't apply in my case and or any NFL player's case until they reach the age of 65, right? So they're retired from the sport, but not necessarily retired from life. So for myself, I took a year to go ahead and study for the GREs, and looking at other institutions that had a counseling program that I could go ahead and enroll in, as someone who had last been in the classroom maybe 12 years prior. And I was lucky and fortunate in being able to go ahead and find William Patterson University, which was maybe 10, 15 minutes from my house. And I went into that program and went there full time for, I think it was a 4-year program at that time. May have been 3 years, may have been 4 years. I'm a little shaky on that timeline, but I was able to go ahead and graduate from there. And I happened to find an internship at another nonprofit that turned into full-time employment, where I was eventually able to go ahead and run a program for adolescent substance use. And through one of my former coworkers at that time, told me about the program at Kean University. And again, I just, on a whim, said, you know what, let me try and see if I can get in. And I was very fortunate to go ahead and be a part of the first cohort. And here I am now, 5 years later, conducting research and recruitment for my dissertation.
And why do you feel that it's so important, the studying that you're doing now and the work you're doing now?
I think it's important, and it's more prolific now, in that when we see the issues that are intrusive of our consciousness, right? When we look at the news, when we look at news media, when we look at newspapers, which I don't read anymore because there's so much negativity. There's very few and far in between feel good stories that you want to read about, something that's encouraging or just telling you that there's something good going on in the world. We're constantly inundated with that. And to deal with that on a daily basis can be difficult for some people. You know, I work in the substance use field, and a lot of people like to think of substance use as, drugs, weed, marijuana, whatever it may be. But alcohol is a substance as well that a lot of people utilize as a coping mechanism to deal with whatever issue it is they're dealing with at that point in time. And I think being able to go ahead and talk to somebody about those things, to have someone give you a true, unvarnished opinion and reflection of what you present, helps people understand where they may be going down the wrong path or how they can improve things, whether it be in their home life, their work life balance, whatever it is. And just having a safe space to go ahead and talk about some things that are bothering you.